In the 1970s, my mom was getting her master's degree and living in a college town in Ontario, Canada. My mom needed an apartment and found a place in an old Victorian house. The house had an apartment in the basement, 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second floor, and 1 in the attic. My mom took a place on the second floor. My mom learned soon after moving in that a girl her age had been murdered in the basement apartment. The killer was at large. He had murdered her, then cleaned her entire apartment, even making her bed, which was sort of his trademark, I believe. I think my mom was a bit unnerved by this, but she's a really laid-back person who is kind of in her own world a lot of the time, and not fazed by much. So for context, this was a blue-collar college town. There were a lot of creeps around who targeted young college-days women. My mom had an incident, for example, where a guy broke into her place and defecated all over her bathroom and stole her underwear. She was also very stunning in her youth, and she looked like Linda Carter, aka Wonder Woman. So she often attracted some unwanted attention, but you get the gist. So the first incident happened shortly after she moves in. She decided to have a party. She was getting ready for the party and left the door to her apartment ajar while she ran downstairs to grab her laundry. When she came back up, a man was standing in her room. She comes in and asks him what the hell he's doing in her apartment. She said the guy just smiled creepily and said he was there for the party. She then told the guy to get out, but then he took a couple steps towards her. Just then, her older brother, who was over 6 feet tall and a pretty big guy, walked into the room behind him. The stranger took one look at my uncle and then bolted. Not too long after, something else creepy happened. It was the middle of summer, so my mom slept with her windows open. Her boyfriend at the time was sleeping over as well. She woke up in the middle of the night and saw the same guy entering the room. He seemed to have not noticed her boyfriend, and again took off before my mom could even scream or wake up her boyfriend. Did she call the police? I don't think so. She again is super laid back and borderline irresponsible, so I can picture her doing nothing. Finally, the creepiest thing yet. So my mom lived next to a beautiful girl about her age named Julie. Julie and my mom were friends and got along well. One night, it was pretty late. My mom had heard a man in the hallway, immediately outside the door. "Julia, I love you. Come out," he was moaning. My mom looked out the peephole and saw the same guy who had been bothering her, but he was outside her door, calling Julia's name. My mom thinks that he got their apartments mixed up, but I think more likely he was looking for my mom and just thought her name was Julia. Anyway, my mom called Julia and told her not to open her door. At this point, they did call the police. By the time the police showed up though, the guy was gone. My mom says that a few weeks later, they arrested the killer responsible for the basement murder and several others. When she saw his mugshot in the paper, she freaked out, because it was the same guy who had basically been stalking her. A few weeks ago, my mom sent me and my little sister to the store a few blocks away. It was a nice day, so we walked. Once we get inside, my sister and I split up. She heads for the food area, and I go to the household items to grab cat food or something. While I'm over there, I hear someone talking to the cashier asking, "Where is she?" The cashier responds, "She's not here, so you might as well leave." I think nothing of it because I'm too engrossed in the cat food options before me to bother thinking of how threatening that sounded. I finally grabbed a bag and headed to the other side of the store to find my sister. As I turn to look down the aisles, I see a guy standing at the other end, staring down an aisle with his back toward me. The store is small, and I know it well enough to know that he's staring down the snack aisle, which is where my sister always is. I speed up and looked over his shoulder to see he is indeed staring at my sister, and that my sister is close to freaking out. So I shove past the guy, hitting him with the cat food by mistake, and call out to my sister asking if she's ready because our dad was waiting outside in the car and he would come in after us soon. The guy quickly left after that, and my sister told me he was following her through the aisles as she roamed. So we ended up standing around the store until we were sure that he was gone, and that we speed walked home. Considering it's a somewhat small town, my sister won't be walking anywhere alone for a while. This happened about 3 years ago. I was attending the university in a nice small town in California. I lived just a couple blocks away from campus. It was about a 10-minute walk, so I never bothered trying to find parking and just walked. I had a math class that ran from 6 to 9 at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I generally have no issues walking home, even in the dark. I'm 6'3", around 200 pounds. I have a big red beard, and I believe people are usually more afraid of me than I am of them. I should note that I'm a total pansy, and were anybody to ever attack me, I'd probably end up in a fetal position crying. About a week before this particular night, the school sent out an email to all the students. There had been several instances of girls being stalked and, in a couple cases, attacked or taken by a group of 3 or 4 men in a black car. They warned us to walk in groups and not stay out late. The attacks were all after dark. I remember reading the email and feeling horrible for the girls who had been attacked. But I also didn't pay it much mind, as it didn't quite fit the attackers' criteria. While people have been able to count the number of assailants and describe the car, nobody ever got a license plate number. It was a very cold Thursday night. I'd wear my large hooded jacket to keep warm on the walk. We had a test that day, which meant we'd get to leave class early. Our teacher would usually spend about 20 minutes going over stuff, then give us the test. After we finished and turned it in, we were allowed to leave. So instead of all 30 or so people leaving class at once, we were all spread out in our departures. I was probably the 10th or so person to finish the test, and I started my walk back home. I threw on my big jacket and put the hood up. I love this jacket because it's incredibly warm and makes me look more bear-like. One of the people who finished the test before me was this fairly petite girl. We had sat next to each other several times, but I'm pretty socially awkward and had never spoken to her. She was walking about 30 yards ahead of me. It was around 8 p.m. and dark out. She was staring at her phone as she walked along. We'd been walking for a couple minutes when I started noticing something that made me feel a bit off. There weren't any streetlights along this stretch of road, so it was pretty dark. I could have sworn I saw something moving in the street, but I wasn't sure. I began to pay closer attention, and after a few seconds, I realized there was a car slowly moving behind this girl. It was a black car, and they didn't have their headlights on, so it was almost impossible to see them. I immediately recalled the email I received the previous week about the attacks. Small girl, alone at night, black car? Holy shit. I sped up to start catching up with her. The car pulled closer as well. I called out to the girl. She stopped and turned around to look at me. As she turned, the car doors opened. 3 men jumped out of the car and started running at her. I started yelling at them, and she started running away from me. They were about to catch her, and I was sprinting at them. I am 100% sure 3 dudes would absolutely kick my ass. I'm sure 1 dude would. I had no idea what was going to happen if I caught up to them in time. I started shouting everything I could think of at them. I deepened my voice to sound more intimidating. I puffed up my bear jacket to look as big as I could. I remembered that nobody had been able to get the plate numbers, so I shined my light in the car. I started shouting out the license plate info at them. This freaked out the attackers. 2 of them ran back to the car. 1 guy turned to me and looked like he was going to come at me, but one of the guys in the car told him not to. I was too big. They flipped their lights on and sped off. I reached out to the girl to make sure that she was okay. I shined my light on her to make sure that she hadn't been cut or anything by the men. She was crying and shaking. At this point, a couple other people had finished their test and had seen the last of the encounter. Another guy from class and I walked the girl to her dorm. She even made us walk her to her door on the 3rd floor, even though access to the building required a card. We called the police and told them about the encounter. I had memorized the plate number on the car, as I had shouted it out at the guys a couple times. A month or so later, they found the car. Inside were some knives, duct tape, mace, and rope. They caught 2 of the guys outright, and were trying to get them to out the others involved. Every Tuesday and Thursday, even after the police caught the guys, I would walk the girl to her dorm after class and then head home. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I thought for a while I was going to either watch this girl get kidnapped or be brutally murdered trying to stop it.